The planet Virelia shone like a jewel in the dark expanse of space. Its oceans reflected colors no human eye had ever seen, and the skies shimmered with streaks of silver light. From orbit it looked peaceful, almost untouched, but inside the palace, the heart of the world, everything was far from calm. Nico's small shuttle hovered over the palace's grand landing platform. He had never seen architecture like this before. The buildings curved in shapes that seemed impossible, flowing like liquid metal and glass, catching the sunlight in ways that made it difficult to focus. He adjusted his suit, took a deep breath, and stepped forward, feeling the smooth surface of the platform under his boots. His heart beat faster. Humans were rare visitors here. Most of the aliens did not believe humans could survive even a day on their world. The palace gates opened slowly. Towering guards, taller than any human with long limbs and smooth, glimmering skin, stood in formation. Their eyes were large and reflective, giving Nico the feeling that they could see into his very thoughts. He kept his hands visible, showing no weapon, only the small tools he always carried for exploration and repair. "Welcome, human," said a voice that was both soft and commanding. A high-ranking attendant approached him, moving with grace that seemed natural but impossible to imitate. "I am Terran, advisor to Queen Alara. You will follow me to the palace." Nico nodded, trying not to stare at everything at once. He had expected aliens to be strange, but their elegance, the way every motion seemed purposeful, surprised him. He followed Terran along corridors that seemed alive. Lights moved beneath the floors, walls shimmered as if they breathed, and holographic symbols floated in the air. Even though he was trained to stay calm in unknown environments, he could not hide his awe. As they walked, Terran spoke quietly. "It is unusual for a human to be invited. Your people rarely travel this far. The Queen is curious about you. That is why you are here." Nico smiled politely. "I am honored. I hope I can be of help to your people." The corridor opened into a massive hall. The ceiling stretched high above, almost too high to see, covered with patterns that shifted like water. The floor was polished so smoothly that Nico saw faint reflections of himself as he stepped. At the far end, Queen Alara sat on her throne. Her presence was impossible to ignore. Even before he noticed her face, he felt it, her aura of authority and intelligence. She was taller than a human, but her figure was elegant and lean. Her skin shimmered faintly in soft colors, changing with her emotions in subtle ways that only a careful observer could notice. Her eyes were large, golden and intelligent, watching him carefully. The palace fell silent. Every attendant, every guard froze in place, waiting for the Queen to speak. "Human," she said, her voice smooth and calm. "You have arrived safely. That is fortunate." Nico bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I come with the hope of learning about your people and offering assistance if needed." Queen Alara tilted her head slightly, studying him. There was no hint of fear in her expression, only interest. "Many of my advisors think humans are fragile. They doubt your strength or your intelligence in matters of importance. Yet here you stand. Why should I trust a human?" Nico met her gaze. "Because humans have survived in worlds no other species could. We find solutions where others see problems. I will not fail if given a task to complete." Alara considered this. Then she rose from her throne. Her movement was fluid, almost like flowing water, but with the weight of authority behind it. She came closer to him, and Nico realized she was even taller than he thought, though she moved with grace rather than force. "Very well, human," she said, her golden eyes meeting his. "We shall see if your words are true. For now you will stay in the palace. You will be watched, yes, but not as a prisoner. You are my guest." Nico nodded again, understanding the delicate balance. To alien species like this, respect was not shown through words alone. Every step, every action mattered. Terran led him to his quarters, which were unlike any place Nico had stayed before. The room had no visible walls or corners. Surfaces curved gently in every direction. Lights shifted slowly to match his movements. A small balcony overlooked a garden where plants glowed faintly in colors that reminded him of fireworks. He stepped outside and took a deep breath. The air was thick with oxygen, but light and sweet in scent. Strange birds with luminous feathers moved among the glowing flowers. Nico smiled. Despite the palace's overwhelming grandeur, there was life here that reminded him of home. That night, Nico could not sleep. His thoughts kept returning to Queen Alara. There was a power in her presence, a calmness combined with sharp intelligence. He had met leaders before, but none had made him feel so small and so inspired at the same time. He wondered what it would be like to truly understand her mind, to see how a species so different from humans thought and felt. The next morning, he was taken to the palace's central hall. A crisis had already begun. A minor power module that supplied energy to a section of the palace had malfunctioned. Nico examined the controls, simple circuits compared to human technology but alien in design. The palace engineers had tried to fix it for hours, but nothing worked. Nico bent over the module. Using only a small toolkit and reasoning that was very human, he adjusted the connections, rerouted a few circuits, and restored power. The lights flickered on across the hall. Aliens turned toward him in astonishment. Even Terran's calm face betrayed surprise. Queen Alara watched quietly, her golden eyes never leaving Nico. Then she nodded slightly. "Perhaps you are more capable than we assumed." Nico straightened, smiling politely. "I only did what I could with what I had." There was a murmur among the attendants and guards. For a human to solve a technical problem that had stumped the palace engineers was remarkable. Whispers spread. Perhaps the Queen's curiosity is justified. Over the next few days, Nico was given small tasks, each testing a different skill: observation, problem-solving, and even diplomacy with visiting alien dignitaries. Each time he succeeded in ways that surprised the palace. Slowly, the court began to change their attitude toward him. What was once cautious dismissal turned to genuine respect, though some remained skeptical. Queen Alara observed him closely through all of this. She did not interfere or give hints. She simply watched. And with every small success, every quiet act of ingenuity, she found herself more intrigued. There was something about humans that other species could not measure. Humans were unpredictable, resilient, and courageous all at once. Nico had no weapons, no advanced alien technology, and yet he moved with confidence in a world that was alien in every sense. One evening, as the twin moons of Virelia rose above the palace, Alara invited Nico to the balcony overlooking the city. The air shimmered with soft light and the streets below buzzed with life. Nico looked out, taking in the alien architecture and glowing gardens, feeling a sense of wonder he had not felt in a long time. "You see," Alara said quietly, standing beside him, "this is my world. Everything you see here my people have built, and yet you move through it without fear." Why? Nico considered her question. "Because I try to understand, not to judge. I see the world as it is, not as I wish it to be. That is all I can do." She nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. Perhaps that is what makes humans different. For the first time, Nico felt that he was not just a visitor or a curiosity. He felt a quiet connection to this alien queen, a sense that his presence mattered beyond his usefulness. He did not understand why she felt this way, but he knew one thing. Virelia was no longer just an alien world to explore. It had become a place where his choices could make a real difference. And as he stood beside her, watching the twin moons rise, he could not shake the feeling that his arrival on Virelia was the start of something far larger than either of them could yet imagine. The next morning, the palace of Virelia was alive with movement. Nico had been given a private tour of the inner halls. The walls glowed with soft colors, shifting as if they reflected the moods of the people inside. Everywhere he looked, he saw evidence of a civilization far beyond human technology. Machines hummed quietly, yet they seemed almost alive, responding instantly to commands or even gestures. Terran, as usual, guided him with careful precision. "You will meet more of the council today," Terran said. "They are wary of humans, especially one who arrives without fear or hesitation." Nico nodded. He had already noticed the subtle glances of the council members during previous briefings. Their eyes held curiosity mixed with suspicion. Humans were rare visitors, and most alien species underestimated them. But Nico had learned long ago that appearances often lied. A calm mind and careful observation could achieve more than strength or size alone. Their first stop was the energy control chamber. The room was massive, filled with glowing panels and holographic displays floating in midair. Nico stepped carefully, mindful not to touch anything accidentally. A group of alien engineers worked on a complex interface, their long fingers moving gracefully, but frustration was clear in their expressions. One of them, Vara spoke sharply in their language, which Terran quickly translated. This module will not respond. We have recalibrated the core 3 times, and yet the circuits remain unstable. Nico approached, observing quietly. May I take a closer look? He asked. Vara frowned but stepped aside. If you think a human can fix it, she said. Nico examined the module. The circuits were unfamiliar, yet basic principles of energy flow still applied. He adjusted the alignment of a few conduits, rerouted some energy pathways, and replaced a small stabilizer with one from his own kit. The hum of the machinery shifted from irregular to smooth. The lights on the panels glowed steadily. The engineers gasped. Vara's eyes widened in disbelief. How did you do that? Nico shrugged. I just followed the flow. Sometimes the simplest path works best. Terran observed quietly, a small smile on his face. Queen Alara, who had entered silently, was watching from the edge of the room. Her golden eyes were thoughtful. She did not speak, but she seemed pleased. By midday, Nico had been introduced to several other parts of the palace, each presenting its own challenge. A diplomatic interface required him to mediate a disagreement between visiting alien dignitaries. His calm words, careful listening, and willingness to understand multiple perspectives resolved tensions before they escalated. The council members whispered among themselves. Humans, it seemed, possessed something more than strength or technology. They had ingenuity, patience, and a subtle form of courage that no alien race had fully measured. During lunch, Nico sat in a grand hall overlooking a garden filled with glowing plants. The air was fragrant with a scent unfamiliar to him but strangely calming. Queen Alara joined him. She carried no attendants, and her presence was unassuming yet powerful. You are different from what I expected, she said softly. Most humans I have read about are simple and reactive. You are precise, deliberate. You think before you act, yet you act without fear. Nico looked at her carefully. I try to understand before judging. I believe every problem has a solution if one looks for it carefully. That is all I can do. Alara nodded. Perhaps that is why you survived this far into space alone. Many of your kind would fail in the first week here. I have learned to adapt, Nico said. I know that understanding others is often more powerful than fighting them. Strength alone rarely solves anything. She smiled faintly. Your perspective may serve us well, Nico. You see patterns we often overlook because we are too focused on complexity. The afternoon brought another test. A security simulation had been set up in the palace's training halls. The challenge was to move through a maze of shifting corridors and bypass defensive systems without triggering alarms. Nico entered the simulation with nothing but a small tool for analysis and his own instincts. He moved slowly, observing every movement of the walls, every change in the lighting patterns. The corridors shifted, but he noticed a rhythm in their motion, something even the most skilled alien operators had missed. Using timing and careful calculation, he navigated the maze successfully, reaching the final chamber without setting off a single alarm. The observers gasped. Even the palace guards, who were among the finest in the galaxy, had failed repeatedly. Queen Alara was silent for a long moment before speaking. You see things differently. That is a gift, Nico bowed slightly. I only pay attention. Everyone has a gift. Mine is noticing what others overlook. By evening, word of Nico's abilities had spread throughout the palace. The council members who had once doubted him were now quietly impressed. Even the palace engineers, who had been skeptical, found themselves discussing his techniques and approaches in hushed tones. Despite his successes, Nico remained humble. He did not seek praise or recognition. For him, each task was an opportunity to learn about this alien world, its people, and the way it functioned. And yet he could not ignore the subtle shift in attention from Queen Alara. She often found reasons to observe him, her golden eyes following his every movement. Nico felt her interest, though he did not understand it fully. That night, Nico returned to his quarters, reflecting on the day. He realized that his human perspective, so often underestimated, had earned him a place of quiet respect. The palace was no longer a foreign world in the sense of danger. It was a place of potential, a stage where his abilities could truly matter. As he prepared for sleep, a message arrived from Queen Alara. It was simple: meet me in the balcony gardens at dawn. When Nico arrived, the twin moons of Virelia hung low in the sky, casting soft silver light over the palace gardens. The glowing plants emitted gentle warmth, illuminating the paths in a dreamlike glow. Alara was already there, standing beside a fountain filled with luminescent water. "You have done well today," she said. Her tone was quiet but firm. "You solved problems that my best advisors could not. You see clearly, act wisely, and remain calm under pressure. Most humans would have failed at least once." Nico bowed slightly. "I did what I could. I only hope it helped." She studied him closely. "It helped more than you realize. Humans are unpredictable, and yet that unpredictability has value. You have shown courage and patience in equal measure. It is rare." Nico felt a small warmth in his chest. Praise from Queen Alara was not something to be taken lightly. He had always believed in the power of understanding, but he had never imagined it could earn such recognition from an alien queen. They walked together through the gardens. Alara spoke of her world, her people, and the delicate balance of power that kept Virelia safe. Nico listened carefully, asking questions when appropriate and offering insights when he saw gaps in reasoning or overlooked possibilities. "You are different from anyone I have met," she said finally. "Not just because you are human, but because you think differently. Most beings focus on power, on rules, on expectations. You focus on what is possible. That is why you succeed where others fail." Nico smiled quietly. "I only try to understand and to do my best with what I have. That is all any of us can do." Alara nodded. She did not speak for a moment, watching the luminescent plants sway gently in the night breeze. Then she said almost to herself, "Perhaps humans are stronger than we imagine, not in body but in heart and mind." Nico felt a quiet respect for her wisdom. He understood then that this queen, while regal and commanding, was also deeply perceptive. She saw beyond appearances and measured worth by actions and insight rather than status or origin. As dawn approached, the garden shimmered with the first light of the sun. Nico knew that his time on Virelia would be challenging, but also meaningful. He had begun to understand that survival alone was not enough. To truly matter here, he would need to continue showing courage, intelligence, and humility. And as he stood beside Queen Alara, watching the sunrise over the alien world, he realized that perhaps his presence was changing the palace as much as it was changing him. The days on Virelia passed quickly, yet each felt full of challenges and discoveries for Nico. He moved through the palace as if it were a living being, learning its rhythms, observing the behaviors of its inhabitants, and quietly building trust. Even though he remained humble, he could feel the subtle shift in attention from those around him. Whispers followed him through the corridors. Some were admiring, others skeptical, but all could sense that this human was unlike any they had ever encountered. Queen Alara watched him more closely than ever. She did not intervene directly, but she found reasons to meet him, sometimes for advice, sometimes for observation. Nico noticed her attention, but did not allow it to distract him. He focused on understanding her world, respecting the culture, and learning from her people. One morning, Nico was summoned to a council meeting. The council chamber was larger than any room he had yet seen, its walls alive with shifting lights that displayed the histories of Virelia in motion. Each council member sat in a high seat that floated slightly above the floor. Their faces reflected years of wisdom and careful calculation, yet there was tension in the air. A neighboring system had sent a delegation to negotiate a trade agreement, but the negotiations had stalled. Nico observed quietly as the aliens argued over minor points, their voices rising and falling in a complex rhythm. Terran leaned close and whispered, "The council has been trying to resolve this for days. Your perspective may help, human." Nico nodded. He cleared his throat and spoke carefully. "Perhaps we are focusing too much on small details. What is the main goal of this agreement?" The council members paused. One of the oldest, a dignitary named Marvin, frowned. "The main goal is simple, mutual benefit, but it is complicated by pride and tradition." Nico nodded. "If we focus on what both sides need most, rather than what each wants to insist upon, we may find common ground. Let us consider solutions that satisfy the core needs, rather than the surface disagreements." He outlined a plan in simple terms, highlighting the essential benefits for each side and suggesting compromises on minor points. The room fell silent. Then slowly the council members began to nod in agreement. The negotiations restarted with renewed focus, and by the end of the meeting, the delegation left with a formal agreement. Smiling and impressed, Queen Alara, who had observed quietly from her seat, gave Nico a small nod of approval. No words were needed. The recognition in her eyes spoke volumes. Nico felt a quiet pride, but he remained humble. He had not acted for praise, but to understand and help. Later that evening, Alara invited Nico to a private garden within the palace. The garden was unlike any he had seen before. The plants glowed softly in blues, purples, and greens. A gentle wind moved through the trees, carrying the faint scent of alien flowers. Water ran in narrow streams, and the sound was calming, almost musical. "You handled the council well today," Alara said. Her voice was quiet, thoughtful. "They are not easy to persuade, yet you found a way." Nico smiled. "I only tried to see the problem from all perspectives. Everyone wants what they think is right. Sometimes you just need to show the path to mutual benefit." She studied him closely. It is rare to find someone who can do that without pride or arrogance. Most beings would insist on their own way or attempt to dominate. You do not, Nico shook his head. I believe that understanding is stronger than force. If we can persuade with reason and respect, we achieve more than with power alone. Alara nodded slowly. She remained silent for a moment, watching the glowing plants sway in the breeze. Then she asked almost softly, "Do you ever feel lonely, Nico? Far from your own world, surrounded by beings who see you as different?" Nico considered the question. "Sometimes. But I find purpose in understanding and helping. That makes the distance easier to bear. And I have found that even in a strange world, one can find connection." Alara smiled faintly. There was a warmth in her gaze that Nico had not noticed before. "Connection is rare here. Many live surrounded by others but remain isolated because they cannot trust easily. You have found a way to enter without fear." Over the following days, Nico and Alara met frequently. They discussed ideas, shared observations, and sometimes walked silently through the palace gardens. The queen found herself drawn to his humility and insight, his ability to remain calm in a world where appearances often ruled judgment. Nico respected her authority, but he also began to see her as more than a ruler. She was intelligent, perceptive, and capable of deep thought. One afternoon, a minor emergency arose. A sudden power fluctuation caused a section of the palace to go dark. Lights flickered and the glow from the walls dimmed. The palace engineers rushed to address the problem, but they were clearly unsure of the source. Nico followed them, observing quietly. He noticed that a conduit in the core of the palace had shifted slightly due to temperature changes, disrupting the energy flow. Using his small toolkit and careful reasoning, he stabilized the conduit and restored power. The lights returned steadily and the engineers stared in amazement. Alara, who had arrived shortly after the incident began, approached Nico. "You see what others cannot. Your mind is precise." Nico shook his head. "I only pay attention. Observation is the first step to understanding." She smiled faintly, a rare softness in her expression. "You are not like any human I have known in reports or studies. Most would have panicked or relied on force. You think, and that makes you strong." Their connection deepened, not through words alone, but through trust. Nico learned to anticipate the subtle signals of the queen's moods. Alara learned to appreciate his perspective, seeing how a human mind could illuminate problems that had seemed insurmountable. Together, they became an unusual pair, one of authority and experience, the other of humility and insight. Rumors began to circulate in the palace. Some attendants whispered about the queen's unusual attention to a human. Some council members raised quiet questions about propriety, but no one could deny Nico's usefulness or the results he achieved. The whispers did not bother him, and Alara seemed unfazed. Both understood that respect and value were earned through action, not opinion. One evening, as the twin moons rose again over Veralia, Nico and Alara walked along a balcony overlooking the city. The streets below were alive with soft lights, and distant towers glimmered like stars. "You are changing the palace," Alara said quietly. "Your presence shifts how others see humans and perhaps even how they see themselves." "That is a rare gift," Nico shook his head. "I am only here to understand and help. I do not seek to change anything. The palace and its people are already strong. I am merely a witness and a helper." She smiled, a faint glimmer of admiration in her golden eyes. "You are humble, yet you influence more than you realize. That is why I am intrigued by you. Your strength is subtle yet undeniable." They stood in silence for a while, watching the moons rise higher. Nico felt a quiet connection. one that went beyond respect or duty. Alara, too, seemed to sense it. There was a growing understanding between them, unspoken yet powerful. In the following days, small tasks continued to test Nico. From solving logistical problems in the palace to mediating minor conflicts among the court, he demonstrated patience, intelligence, and courage. Each success brought him more recognition, yet he remained unchanged in character. The palace began to see him not as a visitor, but as someone who belonged. Alara began to involve him in matters of strategy and diplomacy, listening carefully to his insights. She noticed that Nico did not seek personal gain, only the best outcome for all involved. That quality, rare even among the most seasoned advisors, drew her closer. She found herself seeking his thoughts, valuing his perspective above others, and in quiet moments, enjoying his company beyond the duties of state. One evening, Alara invited Nico to the central hall to observe a holographic map of nearby systems. A small diplomatic crisis was brewing on the borders of Virelia's influence, and she wanted his opinion. Nico studied the map carefully. The neighboring systems are concerned about security but also about trade. If we approach them openly, offering cooperation rather than imposing authority, they may be more willing to engage peacefully. Fear rarely leads to lasting agreements. Alara nodded slowly. You speak with clarity and patience. Most of my advisors would have recommended force, yet your approach may save lives and resources. Nico smiled faintly. I believe understanding is stronger than power. Diplomacy and reason can achieve what threats cannot. For a long moment, they studied the map together in silence. Then Alara spoke softly, almost as if thinking aloud. Perhaps humans are more than observers. Perhaps they are teachers in ways we have not yet understood. Nico did not answer immediately. He only looked at her, recognizing the depth of her thought. It was not flattery she offered, but insight. Their connection deepened not through words, but through shared understanding and respect. The palace of Virelia stood tall under a crimson dawn. The twin suns rose slowly, painting the sky in golden light. It should have been a peaceful morning, but tension filled every hall. Messengers rushed through corridors. Guards moved with alert eyes, and advisors spoke in low, worried tones. Something serious was unfolding. Nico woke to the sound of distant alarms. He quickly dressed and stepped out of his chamber where Terran was waiting. The advisor's expression was calm but heavy. There has been a development, Terran said. Our border outposts report movement from the neighboring empire of Zarathus. Their fleet has entered our territory without permission. Nico frowned. Are they preparing for war? Perhaps, Terran said. Or perhaps they wish to test our strength. Either way, Queen Alara has called for an emergency council meeting. She has requested your presence. Moments later, Nico entered the Grand Council Hall. The massive chamber glowed with the shifting lights of strategic maps projected in the air. Red lines marked the borders, and bright symbols represented ships in motion. Council members spoke rapidly, voices overlapping in concern. Queen Alara stood at the center, calm but firm. Her golden eyes swept across the room, and silence followed. Zarathus seeks to test our defenses, she said. They believe Virelia is weakened. We will prove them wrong. One council member, Marvin, spoke sharply. Your Majesty, we must strike first. Show them our power before they come closer. Another disagreed. If we attack first, they will unite against us. We need diplomacy, not war. The room filled again with arguments. Nico watched in silence for a moment before speaking. If I may, Your Majesty, he said. The room grew quiet. Every alien eye turned toward him. Nico walked closer to the central display. If we fight now, we risk losing everything, even if we win. The Zarathus respect strength, yes, but also cleverness. If we outthink them, we can stop this without bloodshed. Alara tilted her head slightly. What do you propose, Nico? Nico pointed at the map. Their fleet depends on energy drawn from nearby gas fields. If we disrupt those fields, not by attacking but by redirecting energy pulses through controlled signals, their ships will be forced to slow down. They will think it's a natural phenomenon. In that time, we can send them a message that makes them reconsider without feeling humiliated, the council murmured. Some nodded in approval, others in doubt. Marvin frowned. That is a risky plan. What if they discover our interference? Nico met his gaze. Then we will already have time to prepare our defenses properly. A delayed enemy is less dangerous than a fast one. Alara studied him carefully. After a long pause, she said, Do it. The council members exchanged uneasy glances, but no one argued. The Queen's word was final. Within hours, Nico worked with the palace engineers to set up the redirection pulse. The task was complex, requiring precision and deep understanding of both human and alien systems. Nico guided the engineers patiently, explaining the steps in simple terms, focusing on results rather than pride. Slowly, the plan took shape. As the pulse activated, the great holographic display showed the Zarathis fleet slowing. Their energy readings dropped. Confusion spread among their ranks. Then a signal arrived, a message from the Zarathis commander requesting to speak. In the council chamber, the message played aloud. The alien voice echoed through the hall. We have experienced an energy disruption. We believe it is an environmental disturbance. We request permission to hold position until it stabilizes. Queen Alera's lips curved in a small, satisfied smile. She replied calmly, "Permission granted. And while you wait, perhaps we may discuss a peaceful trade route instead of confrontation." The council erupted in whispers of surprise and admiration. The plan had worked. The crisis was avoided, at least for now. Later that evening, the palace held a small gathering to celebrate. The halls glowed softly with blue and silver lights. Music drifted through the air, played on strange, shimmering instruments. The atmosphere was lighter than it had been in weeks. Nico stood quietly by a balcony, looking over the glowing city. He was not used to celebrations. He preferred silence after long hours of work. Still, he appreciated the calm after so much tension. A soft voice spoke behind him. "You have saved more lives today than most warriors ever will." He turned to see Queen Alera standing there. She wore a long flowing robe that shimmered like starlight. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held warmth. "I only did what was needed," Nico said. "I am just grateful the plan worked." Alera stepped closer. "You speak humbly, but your actions carry great weight. You have shown not only intelligence but also compassion. Even my council who doubted you now speak of your wisdom." Nico smiled lightly. "I did not mean to impress anyone. I just wanted to prevent a war." Alera nodded. "That is exactly why you have impressed them." They stood in silence for a moment, the cool night wind brushing against them. Below, the lights of the city flickered like fireflies. The music from the hall continued softly in the distance. Then Alera spoke again, her voice quieter than before. "When you first came here, I saw you as a curiosity, a mystery to study. But now I see something more. You have changed how I view your kind and perhaps how I see my own people as well." Nico met her gaze. "I only tried to show that understanding can be stronger than fear." Alera's eyes softened. "Yes, and in doing so you have reminded me what true leadership means." For a long moment neither spoke. The connection between them was silent but real. Nico felt both honored and uncertain. He respected her deeply, but her words carried a tone he had not heard before. The sound of footsteps interrupted them. Terran appeared at the balcony entrance. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing slightly, "the council awaits your address." "They wish to honor the success of the humans' plan." Alera nodded. "I will join them shortly." She turned back to Nico. "Come with me." "You deserve to be recognized." Nico hesitated but followed. Inside the grand hall, the council stood gathered along with soldiers, engineers, and attendants. The air buzzed with excitement. Queen Alera took her place on the central dais. The room grew quiet. Her voice echoed clearly. "Today, Virelia stands safe. We avoided conflict not through weapons but through wisdom. The one who made this possible is not of our world. Yet his courage and insight have proven that strength does not belong to one species alone." She turned toward Nico, her golden eyes bright. "This human has shown us that understanding can protect us more than any fleet. He is a friend to Virelia and to me." The crowd murmured with admiration. Some bowed their heads, others clapped softly. Nico stood humbly, unsure how to respond. Then Alera took a slow breath. Her next words came not from duty but from something deeper. "In truth," she said, her voice steady but warm, "I wish you were my husband, human." The entire hall fell silent. Every being froze in shock. Even Terran's usually calm face showed disbelief. The Queen's words echoed through the vast chamber. Nico stood stunned. His heart pounded not from fear but from the sheer weight of what she had said. Alera continued, her gaze unwavering. "I do not speak from impulse or weakness. I speak from respect and admiration. You have shown me what it means to lead with heart as well as mind. You have taught me that wisdom has no boundary of species. For a moment, no one dared to speak. Then the crowd began to whisper in waves. Some were amazed, others confused, and a few clearly disapproved. But Alera's authority was beyond question. Nico bowed deeply. His voice was calm, though his heart raced. Your Majesty, your words honor me more than I can express. I do not know if I deserve such trust, but I will always serve your people with loyalty. Alera smiled faintly. You have already done more than enough to earn that trust. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of quiet astonishment. Some members of the court congratulated Nico, while others avoided eye contact, still processing what had happened. Yet no one could deny that the Queen's words had changed everything. When the hall finally emptied, Alera remained by the dais, looking out over the city lights through the open windows. Nico stood beside her, still trying to understand the meaning of her confession. You did not have to say that, he said quietly. I know, Alera replied, but it was the truth, and sometimes the truth must be spoken, even when it surprises the world. The night air flowed gently through the hall, carrying with it the soft hum of the city below. Nico looked at the Queen beside him, realizing that their bond had grown into something neither of them had planned. It was built on respect, understanding, and a shared belief that compassion was the strongest form of power. And though the entire palace would speak of her words for many days to come, Nico knew that this was not an end, but the beginning of something that would reshape the future of Virelia, and perhaps even the galaxy itself. The next morning, the entire palace buzzed with talk of the Queen's words. From the highest council hall to the quietest kitchen corner, everyone repeated the same line, I wish you were my husband, human. Some said it in surprise, others in wonder, and a few in disbelief. Queen Alera had not hidden from the storm her confession created. She moved through the palace calmly as always, holding her head high. Her golden eyes were bright with determination. She knew what her words meant for the royal court and for her people, but she had no regret. Nico, on the other hand, felt a heavy mix of confusion and worry. He respected the Queen deeply, but he had not expected her to speak like that in front of the entire court. Since that moment, the palace guards saluted him with extra care, and servants bowed lower than before. Even Terran, who always remained calm, now watched him carefully. By midday, the royal council called another meeting. The large circular hall was full of tension. Advisors whispered to each other as Nico and Queen Alera entered. When Alera took her seat at the center, the room fell silent. Marvin, the council member who often spoke against humans, stood up first. Your Majesty, he began carefully, the court and the people are confused. Yesterday you made a declaration that shook all of Virelia. Many believe your words mean a union with a human, and that would be something no queen has ever done. Alera's tone was calm but clear. I am aware of their confusion, Marvin. But I spoke from truth, not from tradition. Marvin hesitated. Your Majesty, your wisdom is not in question. But the people fear what they do not understand. They already whisper that the human has bewitched you. Nico's fist tightened slightly, but he said nothing. Alera turned her gaze toward Marvin. Bewitched? Do you truly believe that, counselor? Marvin shook his head quickly. No, my queen. But the people may believe it if we do not explain. Terran finally stepped forward. Perhaps it is time we show them that this human's influence is not a threat, but a gift. Nico's actions have saved Virelia from war. His plans have protected our cities. His loyalty is beyond question. The Queen nodded slowly. Then it is time to show the truth to all. That afternoon, an announcement spread across the capital. The Queen would speak to the people from the great balcony of the palace. The news moved fast. Within hours, thousands gathered in the grand square, filling the air with the hum of voices. When the twin suns began to lower, the palace doors opened. Queen Alera stepped onto the high balcony, dressed in white armor with golden markings. Nico walked beside her, wearing a simple uniform made by the royal tailors, a symbol of unity between their worlds. The crowd went silent. Alera looked down at the sea of faces, then spoke with a clear, steady voice. My people, you have heard many things since last night. Some of you are shocked, some curious, and some afraid. I understand all of these feelings. But today I want to speak from my heart. The crowd listened quietly. This human Nico came to our world by accident. He arrived alone, without army or power. Yet through his courage and kindness he has given us something greater than weapons, hope and understanding. He has shown that strength comes not only from might but from wisdom and compassion. A soft murmur spread through the crowd. Alara continued. When I said I wished he were my husband, I did not speak of breaking our traditions. I spoke of admiration and respect. I wished that all leaders of all races could share the same heart that he has shown me. The heart that values life over pride, peace over conquest. Her voice carried through the square like music. The people listened with growing calm. I do not ask you to forget our customs, Alara said. I ask you to remember what makes us great. The courage to see truth even when it surprises us. Then she turned slightly toward Nico. This human will remain as my advisor, my ally, and my friend. Together we will continue to guide Virelia toward peace and unity. The crowd was quiet for a long moment. Then one voice shouted, "Long live the Queen!" Others followed, their voices rising in waves. Soon the entire square echoed with cheers. Nico felt the tension in his chest ease. He looked at Alara and she smiled softly. "You see," she said quietly, "truth can calm even the loudest storm." Over the next few weeks, things began to change across Virelia. The people slowly accepted Nico not as an outsider but as a symbol of cooperation. He helped design new systems for energy, education, and defense. He trained young engineers to combine human logic with Virelian technology. The results were extraordinary. Under Queen Alara's leadership, the Council approved new policies that encouraged peaceful exchange between species. For the first time, representatives from other worlds were invited to visit openly. Trade began to flourish again. Still, not everyone was happy. In the shadows of the capital, some nobles whispered against the Queen's decisions. They feared that the new friendship between human and Virelian would weaken their power. One night, as Nico worked late in his study, Terran entered quietly. "There are rumors," he said in a low voice. "Some in the noble houses want to remove the Queen's human advisor." Nico looked up, calm but serious. "They want me gone?" "Yes," Terran said. "They believe your influence is too strong. But the Queen refuses to dismiss you. That loyalty makes them desperate," Nico nodded. "Then I will not hide. If they want to test loyalty, let them see mine." The next day, during the Queen's Council session, one of the noble members stood and accused Nico directly. "This human has taken a place that belongs to Virelians," he said loudly. "He changes our ways, our traditions. If this continues, we will lose who we are." Alara raised her hand for silence. "You say we risk losing our identity. But tell me, Counselor, did we not risk losing our freedom when we nearly went to war? Did we not risk our future when pride blinded us?" The Counselor fell silent. Alara continued, "If our traditions cannot grow, they will die. And I will not let that happen." Then she turned to Nico. "Speak freely, my friend." Nico stood, meeting every eye in the room. "I came here as a stranger," he said. "I did not ask for power or honor. I only wanted peace between us. If my presence makes you uneasy, it is not because I change your world, but because I remind you it can change." The hall was silent. No one could argue. Even Marvin, who once doubted him, lowered his gaze in respect. Alara smiled faintly. "Then it is settled. Nico will remain as my chief advisor, and those who fear change must learn to see it not as a threat, but as a path to strength." Over the following months, Virelia entered a golden age. The alliance with the Zerathis grew stronger through diplomacy instead of war. New technologies rose from the mix of human science and Virelian design. The people began to see the human not as a visitor but as part of their destiny. As for Queen Alara and Nico, their bond deepened with each passing day. It was not the love of romance but something purer, a connection built on trust, respect, and shared vision. Together they stood as symbols of unity between two very different worlds. One quiet evening, the two of them stood again on the same balcony where the confession had once shocked the palace. The twin moons shone brightly, casting silver light over the city below. Nico looked out at the glowing towers. "You changed everything," he said softly. Alara smiled. "No, Nico, you did. You reminded us what we could be." He shook his head lightly. "We both did. Alone, I could not have done anything. You gave my voice meaning." Alara turned toward him. "Then we will continue together. There is still much to do. The galaxy needs more than just peace between us. It needs understanding among all races." That is the future I want to build, Nico nodded. And I will help you build it. They stood side by side as the soft wind moved through the balcony. Below them, the city lights formed patterns like constellations, symbols of unity spreading across the land. From that night onward, songs and stories of the human advisor and the Star Queen spread across Virelia. They spoke of the day the Queen confessed before her people, not as a sign of weakness but as a symbol of courage. They spoke of how one human's kindness changed an empire and inspired countless others. Years later, when new generations looked up at the twin moons, they remembered the tale of the human and the Queen who chose peace over pride. It became more than history. It became a legend. And though time passed and worlds changed, one truth remained clear through all ages. Sometimes, one person's heart can shine bright enough to change the stars themselves.